Let's discuss Keats as a romantic poet, the most romantic of all romantic poets. English Romanticism attains in Keats the final stage of its progress. Keats grew to be a poet in the atmosphere of Romanticism dominated by Wordsworth and Coleridge. He felt their great influence, and the fervor of enthusiasm wrote, "Great spirits now on earth are sojourning." The traditions of the great romantic poets were carried forward by Keats. These traditions reached their culminating point in his poems. All the qualities that characterized the Romantic movement during the early 19th century found their culmination in Keats' poetry. Since in his poetry, we notice both romantic and classical features, it is necessary for us to differentiate between classical and romantic poetry. Romantic poetry aims at the complete expression of the individual as compared to classical poetry, which aims at the expression of social experience. Romantic poetry is marked by the heightened sensibility and imagination, while classical poetry is marked by a sense or balance and proportion. Romantic art creates the kind of beauty which is strange, mysterious, and uncommon. Classical art tries to create the kind of beauty which is orderly, familiar, and significant. Repose satisfies the classic, adventure attracts the romantic. The classic appeals to tradition, the romantic lays emphasis on individual talent. In spite of the fact that in Keats' poetry there is a fusion of both romantic and classical qualities, he is most romantic of all the romantic poets of his times. His poetry is the purest poetry. Let us now analyze the romantic qualities in Keats' poetry. Poetry of escape. Most of the romantic poets were not interested in actualities of their own times and the problems facing their society. They had a love for the past and distant places and also peeped into the future. They roamed in the world of beauty, mystery, and wonder. In this respect, Keats was superb. He moved about in the Grecian world of classical beauty, in the medieval world of romantic mystery, and in the Elizabethan world of spacious vigor and energy. Love of the past. Like all the romantic poets, Keats seeks an escape in the past. He travels back into the ancient Greece as well as the Middle Ages. La Belle Dame sans Merci and Isabella are suffused with medieval atmosphere. Supernaturalism. The romantic poets made excursions in the medieval world of mystery and enchantment. Coleridge revived the world of medievalism and Christabel. Keats, like Coleridge, had a fascination for the Middle Ages. In La Belle Dame sans Merci, he entered the world of medieval mystery and superstition, and conjured up, through vivid imagery and spirit of medieval romance, and characterized by the spirit of chivalry and supernaturalism, the strange, the weird, the magical, and the adventurous. The poem has thus the medieval setting and scenery. The poem recreates the period of knights and demons, witches and fairies. Addition of strangeness to beauty. The romantic poets had a love of beauty, and it was their mission in life to create beauty of all forms and kinds in their poetry. In this respect, Keats was the greatest romanticist, for his poetry was built on the foundation of beauty. Every line in his poetry carries its noble fright of beauty. For Keats, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Later on, he identified beauty with truth, and in Hyperion he declared, "For 'tis the eternal law, that first in beauty should be first in might." It was Keats' mission in life to love and create beauty. It is no small thing for Keats, says Matthew Arnold, to have so loved the principle of beauty as to perceive the necessary relation of beauty with truth, and of both with joy. Keats felt pride in being the poet of beauty. "If I should die," he wrote, "I have left no immortal work behind me, nothing to make my friends proud of my memory. But I have loved the principle of beauty in all things, and if I had time, I would have made myself remembered." Love of nature. All the romantic poetry had love of nature, and Keats was also a great poet of nature. He loved nature for his own sake, without finding any mystical meaning as Wordsworth found in the objects of nature. He was tremulous with joy at the presence of nature's loveliness and charms. There was not a mood of earth he did not love, not a season they did not cheer and inspire him. For him, the poetry of earth was never dead. He was in his glory in the fields. The humming of the bee, the sigh of the flower, the glitter of the sun seemed to make his nature tremble. He was so deeply fascinated by nature that he composed wonderful descriptions of the beauties of nature. Imaginative faculty. The Romantic poets were endowed with keen imaginative faculty in Keats. The power of imagination was always at its height. By his vivid imagination, he created the old world of medieval romance, the world of Elizabethan romance, and the varied romance of beauty, love, chivalry, and adventure. To him, poetry was a world of the imagination only, a realm of enchantment, where only those who might dwell saw vision and dreamed visions. The Romantic melancholy. Romanticism had its root in the soil of melancholy and weird sadness. In Keats' poetry, the note of melancholy and sadness is at many a place. We hear it not only in La Belle Dame and Moussi, in the Ode to a Nightingale, Ode to Melancholy, but also in poems dealing mainly with nature. The poet strikes this sad note of despair in the following lines from Ode to the Nightingale. Where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or never pine at them beyond tomorrow. Blending of classicism and romanticism in Keats' poetry. Keats' genius blossomed under the romantic breeze and matured under the sunshine of classicism. If Keats was a romantic, he was also a classicist, not as Pope's school understood the word, but in the sense that he had much of the spirit of the old Greeks, a desire for a perfected rather than an adumbrated beauty, a delight in finished workmanship rather than in vague sensitiveness, feeling for form. Added to this were a deep interest in the subject matter of the old Greek writers.